Revenue is everything. What are your ratios to create the cash flow to put those guys to work? My favorite definition of culture is simply whatever is normal in your organization. What routines do I create? What problems do I solve for technicians? How do I set up technicians to be successful every day?
Dr. John Sherk, welcome to the Business Exit Success Podcast. I'm looking forward to our conversation today because you bring an extensive amount of experience to the table, particularly when it comes to working with HVAC contractors. So can we kick this off by just learning more about your background and how you got into this space?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Tom.
Absolutely.
So I'll try to make my long story short. So my grandfather was a technician. Way back in the late 1950s. I still have his little registration card he had as his license back in the day. And then my mother worked for Johnson Controls for 40 years. So I kind of have this background in my family, although I am the least mechanical person within earshot of this conversation. So, so I went in a more academic track, and long story short, I ended up in a PhD program, and I wrote a doctoral dissertation on air conditioning technicians. And that kind of led to starting a consulting company where I work with some other industries as well, but largely with air conditioning contractors, mechanical contractors, around the issues of talent acquisition, succession planning, kind of everything that's not mechanical.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, so definitely business strategist, business consulting to the HVAC contractor space.
Exactly.
Sounds like awesome. Great. So tell us a little bit about your business? What are some of the services you provide? And then we can dig into a little bit more deep of those, if you don't mind.
Sure. So I basically have two brands underneath my corporate umbrella. One is Operations Laboratory, which we're just now beginning to roll out in a bigger way. Doing fractional recruiting for air conditioning companies, just in the same way that you'd have a fractional controller. You need controller level skills, but you don't need a full-time person. Yeah. Same idea here. The way the labor markets work these days, it just isn't like it used to be. You can't just put out an ad and find who you want anymore. Yeah. And so next level talent, but you don't need a full-time in-house person. So we're rolling that at Operations Laboratory, rolling that out right now. You can go to operationslaboratory.com and see more about that. And then John P. Sherk Consulting, where I do more outside of air conditioning, some business coaching. It's a little more local. I'm from Louisiana. It's a little more Louisiana specific. Okay. Ops Lab is a national company, and I do travel some. I'm going to Buffalo this winter to do some stuff, but mostly it's more small scale business coaching and professionalism training.
Fantastic. Yeah, there's definitely a need to, getting help and finding good talent and then retaining that talent. And we'll definitely dig into a little bit more as we talk further here. But I would like to shift into this topic of hub and spoke. And you and I are value builders. So we help business owners increase the value of their business. And this idea of hub and spoke and becoming owner optional within your business. So can you just first explain hub and spoke and what that means?
Yeah, I would say in general, the concept of hub and spoke is like it sounds like. The owner is the hub, all the rest of the employees, everything's happening is a spoke off of them. And it's sort of like if they took a month off, everything would fall apart. Yeah. And if you're not hub and spoke, it means that someone else is operating the business day to day. You can definitely be involved, and you should be completely in the know of what's happening, but you could be gone for 1, 2, or 3 months and come back and everything would still be going on as usual.
Yep. Yeah. You wouldn't lose your shirt in business, right? You could take a 2 to 3 month vacation. You don't have to have your laptop or your cell phone glued to your hip. You'd be able to survive.
Yeah, awesome. That's right.
And so that flows into, at the end of the day, to solve that hub and spoke problem. So not having every part of your business have to throw through you as the owner, you have to hire good talent for that, right? And delegate and build out systems and processes. So, and that presents more challenges. How do you find great talent? How do you retain them? So what's been your focus as of late with that? Can you talk more about those challenges in particular and what that looks like?
Well, it depends a lot on the size of the business, but
Mm-hmm.
I'd say the most common challenge is if the business is getting to where it's really becoming something to even think about. Maybe you're doing 1.5 million, maybe 2 million. You've got somewhere between 6 and 10 trucks on the road. Somewhere, pricing depends on your market, but basically you're getting to where it would make more sense to start bringing in people like a service manager, somebody who operates the back office or the warehouse. The challenge is that none of these people are billable directly to a job. And so in order to make the jump, your margins are going to go down for a while before they go back up again.
Yeah.
And the threat of that is the number one thing I see owners facing that or looking at that mountain and saying, I don't know if I want to or how to climb that. I mean, it looks like I could actually go to zero net for a while before I'm back making money again. And then is it worth it? And that's in their mind, in those conversations, that's the number one thing I hear. Like I'd have to hire maybe 4 people that are not billable to a job. And those 4 people represent all of my net profit. Yeah. And so that challenge is number one.
And it almost comes over to this mindset or hurdle of, investing in your business, but investing in people to take that dip. And then, a year or 2 down the road, you come back, obviously, right? Because they're able to bring you up to that next level. What helps owners get past that? Like how can you overcome that hurdle? Is it having a process in place so they can navigate that transition? What do you see through that?
Yeah, well, you need a plan. And the plan needs to take the form of, if the numbers are not something you're used to looking at, they need to take the form of a cash flow analysis. Meaning, if you want to get started on this, begin with beefing up how you get business. What is your funnel? How do you use Google advertising and have a good feel for the ratios and that, so if I double this ad spend, that gets me what exactly in revenue, right? And have confidence in that, right? And then you have to start building out who you need, how much they'll cost you, and when you'll hire them over the next couple of years. And once your business funnel, your revenue funnel has a kind of brake and accelerator in it that there's no finger crossing involved.
Yeah.
Then you have control of that process and you see the journey from the end to the beginning and you're not just hoping this works. But you need to be able to break it down and basically a cash flow analysis is, the simple line items in your budget, revenue for this month, expense for this month, what's left at the end of this month, and how does that carry over month to month, right? Yeah. And you may say, okay, in 2 years, I want to not be hub and spoke anymore. Paint that picture 2 years from now, and then you've got a month by month back up into it with a confident revenue stream.
Yeah. And
I can't really overemphasize the importance of feeling like you've got a real kind of valve and meter. In fact, there's a great company who does this called Valve and Meter out of Indianapolis, a valve and meter understanding of your revenue stream. Marsha Barnes is the owner there. She's fantastic. And she does this for air conditioning companies all the time.
Wow. So you got to get a grip. Well, first of all, let's back up. You got to know your numbers,
right?
at a baseline, right? Because there's a lot of folks I talk with, especially in this industry with HVAC, heating and air, they're working 16, 20-hour days, trying to get jobs in, just to get paid, obviously. Yep. So it's digging into those financial statements, tracking those specific metrics. Are there a few ratios that you would say, hey, if someone has not been tracking anything, where should they start to get on this track?
First of all, you need to know revenue per tech. Like what is how much business, which you should keep track of because pricing is changing a lot. I mean, I don't know, whoever's listening, what it's like in your neck of the woods, but in South Louisiana, 5 years ago, you could get a 5-ton split system for a house for maybe 10 grand. Today, 5 years later, you're paying 17.5.
Yeah. Almost double.
And so when we're talking about a 2 or 3 year plan, that's a lot of shift over time, right? So you need to be able to track total cost per tech, almost like if an individual tech was a gross profit center.
Yep.
Like what are your targets there? And then you need to know your ad spend or whatever, however you get business, your spend to revenue ratio. And then from there, you can work out everything else.
Gotcha. I've come across this talking to some other folks, maintenance contracts.
Oh, yes.
They can help if you really build up that side of the business, that can actually help you decrease marketing spend, because essentially your customers are buying their loyalty, right?
Yep, that's right.
Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, it looks like on a residential side, there's plenty of this on the commercial side. It looks like on the residential side, is this really worth it? But I can tell you, my friends in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, who have the 1 Hour franchise, have 11,000 residential maintenance contracts.
Wow.
And this allows you to do things like keep your techs full-time 12 months a year. Not to mention, which is a real issue if you're trying to stabilize an air conditioning business.
Yeah.
And it also gives you revenue that really adds up over time. Now, if you're doing commercial maintenance, that's the majority of my clients who do commercial maintenance.
Okay.
And, you basically have two options there. You can do traditional maintenance, where you're doing the maintenance, and if something breaks, you're doing the repairs at the customer cost. Or you can do a fixed cost maintenance where it's roughly double the price, but if it breaks, then it's your cost to fix it. And that I've seen both. I've seen people make money, a lot of money, both ways. But if you go for fixed costs, you have to be super hyper serious about doing some kick butt maintenance. Like you're not kind of blowing the stuff off the coil.
Dusting the stuff off.
That's right. You're getting in there and you're really doing the maintenance, because that's how you make your money.
Yeah. Well, and that would keep you busy during the months where it's like 65. You're not really running the heat. Nothing's breaking, and gets you out more times in front of your customer for potential opportunities, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I think that in a perfect business model, it's hard to say what perfect is in any one industry.
Yeah.
But you would have recurring revenue in that format. You have recurring revenue roughly equal to your payroll.
Okay.
So if your recurring revenue equals your payroll, you've stabilized that whole dynamic, which is a large recurring expense.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, I got to get something collected this week because I got payroll to put in on Tuesday, and I don't have that in the bank.
Yeah.
Like getting that problem to go away is a big part, because if you don't have that problem solved, the idea of getting rid of hub and spoke feels like a fantasy. Like I got to get through Tuesday, Tom. Don't talk to me about someday and selling the company and all that stuff. I got to get through Tuesday.
Yeah.
And so that, getting that problem solved is part of it too.
So to back up a little bit, if we're framing, let's say, a 1 to 2 man business, or maybe husband and wife, one's doing the back office, one's out on the road, and they're considering doing their first hire, whether it's back office or, another technician. Now, usually to even bring someone on, you need to then train them. You need to have systems and processes in place to train them. So if someone's thinking about that, what should be their first step? Should they build out or start documenting, okay, here's how we want this done, X, Y, and Z. Here's what the training is going to kind of look like to onboard somebody. Should all of those pieces be in place first before finding someone and thinking about bringing somebody on? How should they think about that?
This might sound like it's over the top, but it really isn't. It's almost thinking about starting two different businesses, because the mom and pop, the true mom and pop, where pop is out there doing the service work and the installs, and mom is at home doing the books and the back office. That can be a very nice self-sustaining business in its own way.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah,
exactly. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And you can make a few $100,000 a year doing that. And build up your own customer base, do your own kind of either formal or informal maintenance agreements, where the number there, I think, where you become really stable long-term is right around 400 to 500 customers, 4,500 people in your radius who would say if something goes wrong, they're going to call me. They've got my name on a magnet on their refrigerator, right? Like at that point, that's a very stable business. And then if you want to grow it from there, I would save up the capital first. I'd put $50,000 in the bank first. Okay. And then the next person you hire should be a tech. And then probably the third person you hire should also be a tech, because you need the revenue is everything. So you need people who are out there. And then obviously going with that, you need to know what is your ad spend ratio, or again, however you get business.
Yeah.
What are your ratios to create the cash flow to put those guys to work? At about 3 guys out there in trucks, you've got enough to pull back if you want to and start, working on the business more. A lot of guys get closer to 7 or 8 guys out there before that happens. But the first thing I would do is think of it as just a second business lunch and save up some money. Just like if you were wanting to go out on your own to start with, don't do that without being able to, if you've got only enough money to make it through this week, don't do that. Stay where you are and save up some money first.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah. And I can see your point of starting with a technician, because they're going to bring in another bucket of revenue immediately to the business, as long as they can sell, do their job well, et cetera.
Exactly. But the revenue stream is important. I mean, it's getting more and more expensive to do Google advertising to get business, and private equity is really driving up pricing. You could be behind the curve out there, not realizing that, it takes only 2 years for a lot of this stuff to change. And so it is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's a good segue into, okay, let's say you bring on 2 or 3 good technicians, and I just want to shift into culture. How can the importance of culture really affect, from 2 perspectives, I guess we can look at it. The importance of culture from when you want to attract and retain talent. And then from the perspective of, let's say you do build it up and you do want to eventually sell and exit to retire. I feel like culture from both of those perspectives is evident, very important.
Absolutely.
Can you speak to that? Because, and real quick too, I just want to mention, because the culture part of a business, it's usually not articulated, and it's almost never consistently demonstrated throughout small businesses. Right? It's almost cast to the side. So can you just comment on those?
Yeah. So let's just start with the definition of culture.
Yeah.
Okay. So my favorite definition of culture is simply whatever is normal in your organization. Whatever's normal. If junky, silly fighting in the back office is normal, then that's your culture. If dispatchers disrespecting technicians who are in an attic on a telephone is normal, then that's your culture. If it happened one day, then it needs to be addressed, but that's not your culture. Whatever's normal is your culture, right? So that means, what routines do I create? What problems do I solve for technicians? How do I set up technicians to be successful every day? And my sort of sloganeering of this is, I'm in charge, but you're more important than me. Meaning, I set the standards. Whether the technician puts booties on their shoes before they go in the house as every time we do it, period, standard, that's up to me. That's not up to them. But making sure they get over the bar, and it happens every time, they're the ones collecting the invoice, right? They're the ones they're the ones driving revenue. So listen, please understand, business owner, I'm not trying to disrespect you, but in your company, they are more important than you are. Whoever is doing the work that's generating revenue is more important than you, unless it's you that's doing it. And so as soon as you accept that, a fantastic culture is right around the corner. You could build everything backwards from that notion. And the idea that I never lower expectations, but I always fluctuate my support to make sure we consistently deliver to customers every single time exactly what we promise. And if you work backward from that and allow yourself to value those people to the degree, I think culture comes naturally. I mean, unless you have a personality quirk that's not so great, but most of the time, that what happens is, like, it's a residential company. They have one tech who's really good, a couple techs who are not quite there yet, and then they use up that good tech going out to fix all the stuff, all the mistakes the other guys made. Right. That should feel painful to you, right? It shouldn't feel like, well, I'm not going out there. That's why I paid Earl for that. Right. Well, Earl's not going to be with you very long then, because he doesn't like that culture.
Especially if you have A players and they notice some other employees that are not exactly up to par with them. I mean, they'll leave.
That's right.
Because they're the ones getting called on to be recruited. Like, don't think people aren't calling your A players in your business.
Yeah.
And it almost goes to the point too, for some owners, I've heard this, treat your employees like your customers.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. Yeah. And I know there's some old school guys out there who are like, no way, this is my company. When I was coming up, you got the worst
Yeah.
truck in the fleet. You had to kiss butt. You had to whatever. Well, unless you have a time machine, it's different now.
Yeah.
Right.
Very much so.
Now you bring a guy in because he gets the best brand new truck. It's not like it used to be. And so, the most guys, and I've tested this and it's generally true. Most guys who really know what they're doing can get another job in about 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Like quoting a wage and what truck am I getting? Like in 20 minutes for real, like no exaggeration. And so if you respect and honor that and treat them accordingly, most of this will come naturally.
Yeah.
Right. So at that point, it is what it is. They're standard things. You have to be clear with the expectations. You have to have conversations about tools. Do they have everything they need to do the job well? Do they feel like they're doing what they do best every day? Are you holding accountable non-performers so they don't have to do a job and a half? Mm-hmm. Are you carrying the how you talk about the mission of your business as something more than mechanicals and dollars? Because I can tell you, I don't care where you're listening to this from. If you draw a circle around wherever you are and eliminate 70-degree air, and the entire economy inside that circle is over. So what we do during COVID, the government considered us first responders. What we do has very significant value to everybody's life. Yeah, and very true. That meaning, being part of something greater than ourselves, is right there waiting for us to own in air conditioning, and we just don't pick it up. But it's right there. It's for real, because it's true. I mean, I live in the South, so it's really true here, but everywhere, if no air conditioning, no economy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in central PA, more Northeast. So, I mean, we can get some pretty bad winters and some decently hot summers. I mean, people don't want to stay cold. People don't want to stay hot. Like it's a very, they call it defensive, right? It doesn't matter even with the market stocks and everything. If the economy, like, people are going to pay for this industry. So it's definitely not going away.
Well, and in the low temp side, there's no more frozen food. There's no more, there's the degree to which our entire way of life is held up by air conditioning is not insignificant.
Yeah. So that's a great perspective coming from attracting and, retaining talent, right? Where does it come in as an importance for when someone wants to sell? Someone wants to potentially exit their business, because a buyer is not going to want to buy a business where people are miserable to show up to work. And by the way, people who are going to sell, these potential buyers will interview your employees.
Oh, 100%.
With you not in the room. So they will get the true opinion of how you treat them and are they happy. So, I mean, that's a hint right there, why culture is important. But can you touch on that a little bit further?
Sure. Well, if you want to get to where you're going to sell your business, you have to make some decisions. To me, ideally, it's 5 years before you exit.
Yeah.
And you need to decide what kind of exit you want. Do you want to sell it to your employees? You're going to pass it down generationally to your kids? Are you going to sell to another owner operator who will just kind of take your place and operate the business? Do you want to sell it to private equity? There's, depending on how you want to sell it. Now, the deal to equity is your biggest payday.
Yeah.
But then you have to, what I like to tell people is that if you're going to sell your house, there's one price if you just put a sign in front of it today, and there's another price if you get it ready to be sold. Same idea. The problem is you can get a house ready to be sold in 2 months. A business takes a couple of years. And so that, that's the part of it. But you have to kind of have an understanding of, in Value Builder, what we call the freedom point, which is what's my back end number I need to have and not get any revenue from the business and go off happily into retirement or my next project.
Yes.
Right? Then you work backwards. You have to say, okay, then I have to sell the business for X, but I need to subtract out the frictional cost of selling.
Yep.
Right. And then see what's left after the taxes and the lawyers and all that stuff. And then what percentage of revenue can I take from that over time in perpetuity? And is that enough? And if it's not, then I got to massage the numbers up to where the sale number meets all those other needs, then I got to look at the business, see where the gaps are, and expand the business to match that number.
Yeah.
And so, I'll just say, so that's it. That's 5 years, if you're close, could be 10 or 15 years if you really want a big number.
Yeah.
So,
and making the decision, do you want to put in the time, energy, and money to get it to where it needs to be? Because some don't, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
But I mean, I talk about this a lot on my podcast because I'm coming from the financial planning side, where you need to figure out what you need if you were to exit. You got to get a valuation to see where you're at, and then look at your outside assets. And there's usually a gap. There's going to be a gap. And that's where you reach out to someone like John, or a value builder, or someone to help close the value gap in your business. So when you do sell, it's going to be funded, and you can enjoy you have more options of what you want to do next.
Yeah.
So
important. And some realism about, the people who are buying a business are buying a set of customers, some processes, and they're buying the financials.
Yeah.
And easily the most undervalued thing owners do who have never sold a business, the most thing they undervalue too much is quality financials. Yeah. If you can afford to have a third party audit your books, really coach you on what's the right way to put a credit card transaction into your system, what's the right way to close every month, what's the right way, what should the balance sheet look like? Very common for owners to not really understand a balance sheet. Yeah. They understand the P&L, like, did we make money the last month? But the balance sheet looks like this thing someone needs to explain to them. And you don't have to become a CPA, but a messy balance sheet will drastically reduce the price someone will pay for your business. And it's just true. And so all those things have to be cleaned up, and they have to be cleaned up over time, so it doesn't look like you just now did it, because they're going to see 3 years of your financials or more. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. This isn't a last minute thing to do right before you want to try to, sell your business. You need a track record of doing it consistently, at least, like you said, over 3 years.
Yep.
That's a common number that I've heard multiple times.
Yeah. And if it just so you're aware in listening, if you've never been through this, the way businesses are valued for sale is net profit times some multiplier. Right. And the multiplier, let's say you made last year $500,000 and the multiplier is 5, let's say. So that would 5 times $500,000 would make it a $2.5 million sale on a business. Right. But if you're hub and spoke, that 5 turns into a 3.
Yeah.
And you have to commit to stay on for a while. If your financials are spectacular, you're not at all hub and spoke, that might go up to 7 or 8.
Yeah.
Right. So it's moving that multiplier up or down is times your net profit, how you kind of increase that number.
Yes. Yeah, really good point. And we've talked about that before. I guess you can call them the intangible capitals, right? That's besides the financials, which are very, very important, but that's your culture. Is the business entirely funneling just through you?
That's right.
Recurring revenue, all those value drivers.
That's right. Does your gross profit benchmark better or worse than the industry standard?
Yeah.
Do you have a lot of business on one customer? There's some standard things that will drive the value up or down. And if you have enough time, there's things you can fix.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So as we come to the end, I try to, on this podcast, create some actionable, items for folks that they can start doing right away. What would you say are 3 tactics or strategies, HVAC owners can do today to improve culture or start building a culture if it's just, a 2-person shop? What are some actionable things they could do right away?
Yeah, here's what I would do right away. There's 5 things. If we're talking about culture, here's 5 things. Number 1, get into the issue of clarifying expectations. The people can't perform if they don't understand the expectations. If we run fast, that's different from running 8-minute miles. Get really clear with your expectations, right? Then it's I'm in charge and you're more important than me. So have the conversation about expectations. How clear are we? Gallup says globally 1 in 2 employees strongly agree with the statement, I know what is expected of me at work. 1 in 2. Probably the same for you, right? So start with that. Would you strongly agree with the statement? You know what is expected of you? Okay. Number two, the tools issue is big. Not having the proper tools and equipment to do your job well tracks as the number one stress. It correlates to that issue is number one in terms of high stress at work. And so if you want a good culture, you don't have high stress at work. So where are you at with tools? Do you have to talk tool budget? Some guys, they don't want to buy the tools. Deal with tools however you need to, right? Number three, have the conversation with your best players about, am I holding everybody accountable that I should be?
Yeah.
Or am I expecting you to clean up things, conversations I just don't want to take the time to have, and problems I don't want to solve, so I'm making you solve them.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, clean that up. Number four, ask the question, do you feel like you're doing what you do best every day? Just ask them. And if not, what's getting in the way of that? And what do we do to fix it? Right.
Very good.
Number five is the mission question. Rethink how you talk about the mission and values of your organization and bring meaning into it. It's either meaning in terms of the impact of the work or meaning in terms of how important it is that you're providing for your family. But elevate the work that they're doing into something greater than themselves.
Yeah.
And have that language in your culture. Do those five things and you're well on your way to a good culture.
Fantastic. 5 really specific, detailed tasks. So I hope folks are listening and can start implementing some of those. And I would guess if you're struggling to implement some of those, they can reach out to John.
Yep, that's right.
Because a lot of it, like, you're giving away everything what folks should do, but the execution and the implementation is probably very difficult because it's life in our day-to-day. We're running around. Our business is keeping us really busy. So that's where hiring a coach, hiring someone to help us execute this stuff can add a tremendous amount of value, I would imagine, over time.
Based on our conversation, one more thing I'd throw in there is figure out your freedom point sooner rather than later. Call Tom this week. This isn't part of what I do, but it's part of what Tom does. Figure out what the dollar number is, the dollar figure that when it's in the bank, apart from the business, you're done, or can be if you want to, right? Yeah. So that you can start trickling back and seeing what you got to do with your business so that your business in dollars equals that number. Mm-hmm. And don't use hope as a strategy, right? Yeah. Get the business valuation done. The Value Builder can do that for you. And get that freedom point set. Also, Value Builder can do that for you with the Freedom Score report, and start looking at you're getting there when you look at your business and you see dollars like Keanu Reeves sees the Matrix, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm seeing everything in dollars, not just processes and people.
Yeah.
And when you get to that point, all this stuff gets a lot easier.
Yeah. Great advice. Great advice. That's fantastic, John. Lots of really good stuff. Where can people learn more about you, your business, and connect with you?
The first place I would go, you can check out my 2 websites, johnpsherk.com and operationslaboratory.com. But you know what? If you want get on a call and just get to know each other, just reach out to me. My email is john, JOHN, at johnpsherk, it's SHERK.com, john@johnpsherk.com. Just reach out and say, hey, heard you on Tom's podcast. Can we get 15 minutes and we'll set up a call and have a chat?
Awesome. Well, thanks again, John. Really good stuff. I appreciate your time and insight today.
You bet. Thanks for the invite, Tom.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.